Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to part one of our special budget edition of Morning Shot. Against the backdrop of a world that's facing growing uncertainty, Prime Minister and Finance Minister Lawrence Wong delivered his fourth budget statement, but his first as Prime Minister, one with an emphasis on tackling immediate challenges while laying the groundwork for a more resilient tomorrow.
The baton has now been passed, and it is our turn to take Singapore forward. This budget builds on previous budgets, not only to address today's challenges, but to plan ahead and secure Singapore's future. Budget 2025 is a budget for all Singaporeans. It's also a budget shaped together with all Singaporeans. It further advances our Forward Singapore agenda, which incorporates your aspirations and views and seeks to keep our society strong and united.
Yes, indeed, a budget for all Singaporeans. Now, just to name some of the key announcements, on the business front, a 50% corporate income tax rebate, more support for firms increasing salaries of lower wage workers, and up to $150 million will be set aside for a new enterprise compute initiative. On the green front, families living in private properties will get $400 in climate vouchers, while HDB households will receive an additional $100 voucher, and authorities to study the potential deployment of nuclear power in Singapore.
Also in the mix, Singaporean households will get $800 in CDC vouchers and up to $760 in utility rebates. And to mark SG60, Singaporeans will get up to $800 in vouchers, 60% personal income tax rebate, and special baby gifts. So for more insights, we're joined by a panel of guests, starting with Professor Lawrence Loh, Director of the Center of Governance and Sustainability at NUS Business School. Lawrence, good morning. Thanks for coming on The Breakfast Show.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lawrence. Also with us today, Dr. Gillian Koh makes a return to the show, Senior Research Fellow, Institute of Policy Studies. Gillian, good morning.
Thanks for having me on, Audrey and Imad. Good to be here.
Great to have you.
Great to have you. And of course, here with us in the studio, Patrick Tay, Assistant Secretary General, NTUC, and also Member of Parliament for Pioneer SMC. Good morning, Patrick.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
All right, thank you, the three of you, for coming on. Lawrence, let's kickstart things with you. Now, the estimated size of this year's budget stands at just over 143 billion Singapore dollars. That's more substantial than last year's 134.2 billion. Now, with regards to the type of initiatives that have been introduced, how similar do you think it is compared to previous budgets, including that of SG50 some 10 years ago?
Yes, if you look at SG50, that's of course in 2015. Incidentally, that's also an election year, but that's not quite the issue. In fact, I'm very amazed by the similarities in terms of, say, the principles and the fundamentals. There's a lot of consistency from, say, 10 years ago and over the years in terms of each year budget, I'll say, provisions. I can see a certain pattern and the trend. And if you look at even, say, SG50, which is 10 years ago, in fact, that was the year when Skills Future was started. And then Finance Minister is Mr. Taman, now President. He actually articulated this vision for us to continue in this relentless quest to improve our skills, and this actually starts over the years. Every year we make a progressive advancements to upgrade the manpower pool. So I can see over the years we always focus on manpower, which serve the industries and the economy, and at the same time we do not have any letdown on individuals and households.
Yeah, so some consistency on that front. And Gillian, a big part of this year's budget covered support for cost of living concerns, seniors and workers, among other initiatives. What stood out for you in that space?
Well, what stood out for me is this, that when PM said that there's something for everyone, while they seem like little measures, it's an inclusive approach that he's taken. What do I mean? I would say that when you look at even the extension of ease which is what government provides for people, seniors to live and age in place, this is now extended to people who live in private estates. Also, the climate vouchers, which used to be extended only to HDB dwellers, this also now will cover people who live in private estates, $400 in climate vouchers. That's the first point. And then the second point that really stood out for me is, as you mentioned earlier, the balance between addressing immediate needs, the cost of living needs, and this time around there is so much to be given out from the assurance package, CDC vouchers, but also SG60 vouchers. But you'll see the emphasis on the future, the measures on climate change, a $5 billion top-up on the coastal and flood protection, but more critically, dealing with the heavy vehicles and what they do for carbon emissions, and finally, the addressing of that existential constraint and problem of energy. Now, you got to remember that this is the Prime Minister who used to be the head of the Energy Authority agency, right? And the discussion of the future about looking into, nuclear power in order to achieve our climate goals. I think that's really just to give you a broad sweep, the balancing between immediate needs and future needs.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gillian. Patrick, just to bring you into the mix, briefly before we dive deeper into the initiatives on workers, can you sum up your key takeaways from this budget?
I think PM is taking a lot of effort in trying to get feedback from the ground, including with NTUC in the labour movement. And I'm glad that quite a number of the feedback have been taken and are reflected in this year's budget. And I would sort of sum up this year's budget, what I call the 3 Cs. Firstly, coping with cost of living. I think there was a lot of feedback that rising prices of essentials, including daily necessities. I think the vouchers and the SG60 vouchers and the whole slew and plethora of announcements will go in some way to help mitigate the rising cost of living. I think second is caring. I think caring not just for workers in general through the various measures and Singaporeans, but with a particular emphasis on a couple of segments which is reiterated in the budget. The families, I think there's big support for families, a big support for seniors, with the slew of announcements, including extending the special employment credit, including not just these two, but he mentioned specifically persons with disabilities as well as ex-offenders. So I think caring for Singaporeans, I think that's a big feature. And the third C, I think, is catalyzing companies through the various measures from some of the tax reliefs to help small and medium enterprises, including a lot of emphasis on supporting companies to send their workers for training and to be able to transform themselves and meet with the various curveballs, challenges, and disruptions that they will face.
Yeah, well, talking about businesses and workers, Patrick, an additional $200 million will be added to NTUC's Company Training Committee grant to help businesses upgrade their workforce. And there'll also be a new Skills Future Workforce Development grant. So which sectors do you think are likely to benefit the most from this? And are there specific skill sets that the labor movement is looking to help workers develop, you think?
Yes. So this company training committee is something that the labor movement has started. And we have piloted it and then we have rolled it out. And in the past couple of years, we have seen good success, impacting more than 100,000 workers and across more than 2,700 companies, as mentioned by PM. And we see positive impact on the ground because better wages, better work prospects, and on the whole, companies and businesses have benefited. And I think this top-up is timely, and we hope this would catalyze companies to do even more in the area of training and transformation. And as for skills, we have various clusters, various sectors. Increasingly, we see skills in demand in different sectors and clusters. You could be in aviation, healthcare, manufacturing. I think it's different strokes for different folks. So I think with this very generous top-up of the company training committee grants can be given out to companies to encourage them to send their workers for training in the in-demand skills. For example, if they are introducing new machinery, new robotics, new Gen AI, to be able to bring the workers up to speed in those skills in demand, and then, of course, transform themselves to job redesign and to make the workplace a more safer, a better place where they can raise productivity at the same time.
Yeah, skills upgrading is definitely the need of the hour. And Gillian, as PM Wong alluded to, the government is also investing heavily in lifelong learning. Now, in this budget, we saw measures ranging from an enhancement of workfare skills support for lower wage workers, an extension of training allowance to part-time training, as well as support for autonomous universities like SUSS and SIT. How would you assess our competitiveness on the global stage, and are these measures sufficient, you think, in helping locals gain relevant skills for a changing economy?
Yes, I think that generally workers are, well equipped when you look across globally to all the markets that we sort of compare ourselves to. But I think the issue is really that we do have workers who will lag as technological change comes upon us. And we're not just talking about, AI-related work for which there is, as you can see, support for businesses to adopt. And that's the obvious space, of course. But as PM cited, there are workers, even in the administrative roles, who want to upgrade themselves, and he cited one lady in particular. So, there is the competitiveness part of it, which is business, but day in, day out, there are Singaporeans who want to go the one notch up. So these measures of leveling up on skills, but also remember, when people level up, they get higher in the career ladder. They want to draw higher wages. Then the support for businesses to be able to afford those higher wages, like through the progressive wage credit scheme, is also important. So there is also the top up to the National Productivity Fund. So once you do that, with greater capital investment in, systems that will help businesses be more productive, you need people to work at it. But I would make one final point, and really the issue is this for businesses, that even as you level up workers at every part of the work ladder, the career ladder, there's just not enough people that they need in order to grow the businesses that, the market demands and also that they aspire to. So bridging the gap between people, making them even more productive, every person playing at their highest level, I think the businesses will still say we face a shortfall of actual, literal numbers of people to do the work that we want to do in order to truly grow their businesses and for the economy to really operate at a high octane level. So there was not much said about more workers, but a lot said about getting more out of workers and allowing them to play at a higher level and draw better returns for their efforts.
Yeah, well, leveling up on skills and demands for labor, a big focus this year. Another area of significance of this year's budget are the measures on sustainability. And on the environment front, authorities are studying nuclear power deployment in Singapore, and also an additional $5 billion will be injected into the Coastal and Flood Protection Fund. So, Lawrence, this one is to you. What are the gaps on these two fronts at the moment, and how can the government balance out key concerns with the possible opportunities it could bring?
I think, first of all, the whole issue about new technologies, new options, coastal protection, or even nuclear energy, this is something that's still evolving and definitely not cast in stone. And in fact, Singapore, the industries, the experts are still on the learning curve. But I think what is very good now is we have made clear statement on our intent towards developing our industries as well as capabilities in this direction. So if you look at, say, the coastal protection, definitely it will cascade down to many opportunities to various industries or even services, ranging from, say, construction to consulting And even for the other big one, the nuclear power. I grew up in the days when we talk about nuclear power or nuclear energy. The old name is atomic energy. It's a bit scary, but I think we have reached a stage where technology can make it miniaturized, and we speak about SMR or small modular reactor. This is something that's already commercially viable, and in no time it could be effectively and even safely deployed for utilization. So I think that the statement in this budget speech was very, very purposeful. It set the motion for us to look at alternative sources of energy away from fossil fuel, and low carbon energy like nuclear is something that cannot be ruled out. We need the capability to purchase nuclear energy. We need the capability to distribute and use nuclear energy.
Yeah, Lawrence, if we stick to the energy narrative here, PM Wong also announced a new heavy vehicle zero emissions scheme and electric heavy vehicle charger grant, and that is to accelerate the adoption of clean heavy vehicles. But we can't also forget that additional flat component or AFC of road tax for electric heavy goods vehicles and buses as well. Now, the question is, are businesses concerned about that, and which industries do you think will likely see a greater expense as a result?
I think if you look at the way we approach, say, electrification of now is heavy vehicles, I think it's a balance of incentives as well as some potential, I would say, losses from some of the fossil fuel excise tax. So very, very well, we give, make it attractive for adopters to move heavy vehicles into electrified forms. And I think it's very clear that we need that policy boost. But at the same time, I think for parity as well as even, say, need of the budget, we induce a little bit tax. So that I think on balance, we are actually moving very clear in this direction. And I think in terms of cost implication, of course, beyond the transportation, it will definitely affect related industries in manufacturing, in construction. In fact, I think that the cost might even eventually will have to be spread across the economy. But having said that, I think collectively, in terms of long-term benefits, having things that are electrified will lead to lower carbon emission. And I think all industries, all workers, all people will be able to share in the fruits.
All right, we're going to conclude part one of this budget special on Morning Shot with a question to Gillian. I want to come back full circle to a point you mentioned at the outset. That's the extension of $400 worth of climate vouchers to all Singaporean families living in private property, which is different from the past, previously just applied to HDB, while all HDB households will receive an additional $100 worth of vouchers. Now, looking at this from a broader lens, how big of an impact can this have on shifting the needle with encouraging people to go green? Is cost a central issue here?
Well, cost can be part of an issue, but really this is a gesture of an incentive to change habits. If you recall, as Lawrence mentioned, in 2015, the government introduced Skills Future system. And again, at that time, it was $500 in everybody's account in order to take up a course, to upgrade themselves or take something of interest. It's just to create that habit of lifelong learning. So with regard to climate change and getting people to live more green lives, of course, as you mentioned, the climate vouchers were already introduced previously, but to HDB households and now extended to private property. Again, this is a way in which to create the habit of thinking green. And really, there's no excuse not to choose the greener option when you can, not just because you get the $400, and certainly it's not a huge amount of money for private property dwellers, but it is a nudge towards thinking that the government is telling you we are supporting that new habit. So please adopt that habit and carry on. So I think it's to be viewed in that light, a way to nudge a habit.
All right, we've got a lot more to cover for Budget 2025. We've been speaking with Professor Lawrence Loh of NUS Business School, Dr. Gillian Ko of Institute of Policy Studies, and Patrick Tay of NTUC, who analyzed key budget initiatives in the areas of business, workers, and sustainability announced by Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. Stay with us as we unpack how the government is setting out to build a more resilient Singapore in part 2 of Morning Shot.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.